Hi, today we're going to take a long, hard look at advanced comparisons. Now, isn't that a bit of an oxymoron? Advanced comparisons. What is advanced about such a basic thing? Well, you're about to see. The devil is in the details, that's what they say, but I like to paraphrase that by saying that the level is in the details. Of course, the details can be something as simple as just a syllable or a word. For instance, we will see later that the word far, the word way, can make all the difference in terms of adding nuance, connotations, color, and basically range. That's what you have when you can resort to a whole menu of options to express a comparison in this particular case. So let's start with the comparatives of equality. Now, the Cookie Monster is as blue as Grover. Now, we are going literally Sesame Street level here. Let's check it out. Now, that's the Cookie Monster. And this is Grover. They are roughly the same shade of blue, so I think the comparative checks out just fine. But you might say, well, that's the A level. How can I jazz it up? Or is it possible at all to a little? Well, it is. So the the expression every bit, we say every little bit counts, can make a difference. Now, look at this. He's every bit as stingy as his mother. Now, why would a speaker say that? Obviously, you want to stress the fact that there is no difference between him and her. They are both just as stingy. Okay, so I loved him every bit as much as she did. It was this same thing here. We're trying to concentrate on the fact that he I loved him exactly as much as she did. It tastes every bit as good as the oven-baked variety. Of course, this is probably taken from some kind of a commercial trying to promote pre-cooked meals or TV dinners or whatever you want to call them. But basically, they're trying to sell you this idea that it is just like homemade, every bit as good. All right. So let's take that crystal ball and those tarot cards. One advanced speaker might be tempted to say that when it comes to predicting the next winner of the Champions League, well, the crystal ball and the tarot cards are every bit as useless, or sorry, the crystal ball is every bit as useless as the tarot cards. There you go. That's something that an intermediate speaker obviously is not ready to say. So moving on to the particular way in which we can place emphasis on a comparative, we have as with few. As few as 50 students passed the final exam. Just listen to the difference between that, which is nuanced, and 50 students passed the final exam. In the unnuanced expression, we just get a cold fact. 50 students passed. When you say as few as, obviously, you express the idea that, they are few, that you expected more, or that more students would have been expected. The same thing can be said about we announce the winners as early as tomorrow. Now, clearly, you're trying to convey that notion that it's early, to do that tomorrow. I mean, usually we do that. It takes a little while longer. As far back as 1936 is more interesting than just it started in 1936. You clearly notice the difference, don't you? Okay, now this is probably my favorite. Tropical islands, but nowhere near as tame as in Galapagos. Now, if you say nowhere near as tame as, that is quite a mouthful. It sounds like you're trying to make a point. But if you say they are not so tame as in Galapagos, Now, the that shade of meaning is lost, and in this particular case, it's not a semantic shade of meaning because it's mostly about your attitude, is how you feel about this. You feel that there is a big pronounced difference. Okay. Comparatives of superiority. Here we go. Now look at this guy. Let's call him Kevin. I don't know who that is. I actually found this on the internet. I don't know what I typed. Probably, boring guy or something. Anyway, this man, whoever he might be, doesn't look like the sexiest man on the planet. Can we agree on that? I think there is no discussion there. Now, unlike this other gentleman here, Jonathan, that is his actual name, by the way, he's an actor, and he's sort of famous in America. He used to endorse Dos Equis, a Mexican beer. Now, look at this. Jonathan looks more interesting than Kevin. Well, duh, yeah. But that is obviously not advanced. How can we improve on that? By saying way more interesting than Kevin. Or how about far more interesting than Kevin? Now, way is slightly slangy, colloquial, far is standard. So there is already a difference between those two. Much more interesting, a bit more interesting. You want to overstate it, or you want to go down the British road. A lot more interesting. Do you get the picture? Okay. That is advanced. So let's practice. Now, what would you say about this? Now, looks kind of creepy, okay? But so does this. So what kind of sentence would you come up with, okay? I will give you 3 long seconds. Any ideas? All right. Now, if you say this is just as creepy, well, at least you say just, like exactly, every bit as spooky, or but that's the ball game, basically. So adverbs, it's a simple resource. You say it was easier. Now this is as predictable and boring as you can get. All right. It doesn't get any more boring than that. There you have another spicy advanced comparison. Any more boring? Anyway, if we insert an adverb, for instance, considerably easier, we make it sound more interesting. Infinitely easier. Surprisingly easier. Now, in this case, again, you sort of let your attitude show, because if you say surprisingly, it's because you find it, unusual somehow. Now, this is, I mean, if you're into movies, you might recognize this scene from Casino Royale. I'm not going to explain it, it would take a long time, but basically, James Bond says considerably and lets the viewer fill in the blanks, because that is a comparison that he does not complete. It's quite interesting, quite an interesting example of this comparison with an adverb. So the sooner the better. There is not much I can say about this. You probably saw this in the B1 level, B2 level. The more the merrier. Cuantos más mejor. That's a classic comedy. So there you go. Examples. The sooner I get up, the better I feel. All right. The longer he waits, the less likely he is, and all the rest of it. I think this is rather self-explanatory. So I think we should move on, all right? But remember that this sounds like you have finally mastered that upper intermediate structure. Using comparatives for emphasis with these expressions that, in terms of grammar, they hold no secrets, but Spanish speakers tend to have a hard time trying to use them. Check them out. My computer screen's twice as big as yours. I believe that many of my students would be in two minds, meaning should I go and try and say double as, or the double, or they would play around with that word, forget it. Twice as big, twice the size of, that's the way to go about it. And down here, okay, I'm going to allow myself this. You see this? Jesus, I'm not doing a good job of it. Anyway, how pathetic is that? Anyway, twofold. Uh, Twofold, I'm sorry about that, by the way. Twofold is it can be used as an adjective, meaning, and the reasons are twofold, meaning there are two reasons in essence. That's what you can say. But a twofold increase, it means that the amount is twice as big as it used to be. So in a kind of covert way, that is already a comparative. And of course, one that a B2 speaker is not likely to use. Comparatives of inferiority. Now, this is something that you don't know because you don't have any inferiority complex, do you? You feel so self-satisfied with your C1 level. Let's see, less and fewer. Now, I'm glad to say that this is not a big thing. It's a native mistake. I like to call it that because many native speakers have problems with this structure, and this speaks volumes of the state of affairs. The website Grammarly, that gives advice about dubious expressions or doubtful uses of English grammar, this is what they have to say about less and fewer. That basically there are fewer candidates this year is correct. My doctor says I should drink less coffee. Why should this be a problem? Because many native speakers actually would be happy to say there are less candidates this year. You should wipe that smug face off your head. I was trapped in my syntax here. What I'm trying to say is don't feel so smug about this. Basically, because we do have those mistakes in Spanish. Sometimes we say la mayoría de los españoles piensan plural. By the bulk is singular. La mayoría de los piensa. La mayoría piensa. That would be a native mistake. Okay, it doesn't even sound that bad when you think about that. All right. Well, this is kind of it goes along the same lines, less and fewer. The answer is, well, this is a quiz for you in case you don't know what to do at 3 o'clock in the morning during this endless lockdown. Okay, go do those exercises. They're fun and they're good for your self-esteem. All right. Anyway, getting back to the explanation, with countable nouns, we use fewer. Candidates is countable. With uncountable nouns, we have less. As simple as that. Okay. Superlatives. Okay. Allow me to say one thing. Okay. Superlatives. Now, in my very questionable and personal view, this is the last refuge of the incompetent, inarticulate speaker. I know this is me going overboard a little bit, but that is a superlative right there. All right. Now, why do I say this? Well, to me, a sentence like this, it was the worst ever. I mean, think about that seriously. How often do you come across something that extreme, that is the worst that you have ever seen in your life? I think it's a cheap thing to say. It's lame, it's easy, it's lazy English. All right. It sounds so teenage when you say it was the worst thing ever. Okay, so you want to sound like you have options, So strike that. Forget the ever, and let's steer clear of hyperbole, because that is what they say. Well, it is just hyperbole. Let's go for something more along the lines of what we see in the classroom. Now, super candidates. Don't you love that picture? Imagine you're a recruiter, a headhunter. there's a job interview and you have a super candidate across the table. What do you say? At the end of the screening process, you might find yourself saying she was, this woman, the best candidate. Again, sort of simple, all right? It's not, there's nothing wrong with that. You can say she was the best, but you can improve on that by saying maybe she was by far, like the difference was so clear, so marked. So she was hands down. That is slightly colloquial. I like that. Without question might make you sound more formal, more businesslike, maybe. Obviously, shows your attitude, like, instead of saying it goes without saying, she was the best. Needless to say, undoubtedly, I mean, you can express that in different parts of the sentence, but right before the superlative, this is the place to insert those elements. Okay? This is actually taken from the C11 textbook, close up. Check this out. So high as to plus infinitive. So high as to put people off going. Not very B2-ish, wouldn't you say? So few paintings. I don't think any of you would be tempted to say so less. So less doesn't really work. Okay. So few paintings, and of course, so bad a play. Now, what is interesting about this is that you would be, I mean, statistically, I think just about every single one of you would say such a bad play. Because, first of all, you might not be aware that this is all right, so bad a play. So bad a play that I had to walk out of the theater. That is so C1-ish. I love it. All right, so bad a play and such a bad play. If you can change from one to the other, that means that you have, remember, range. So this is the moment when I'm going to get myself out of the picture, quite literally. All right, this is a moment for you to practice. I'm going to show you some images, and ideally, you're going to come up with comparisons in your head. You don't need to say them out aloud. Just think about analogies or potential, comparisons. All right. So without further ado, here we go.
Okay, I know this is hard. I mean, how do you begin to describe your thoughts regarding these three gentlemen? Anyway, I never said it was going to be easy, but you might. I've given you enough options to come up with a decent comparative sentence. Okay, for the last slide, I think we all need a superlative. Check this out.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to butt in again, but I want to be present when you see this. I would love to see the look on your face when you see this. Come on, admit it. You feel the urge to say something superlative because this is absolutely breathtaking. I mean, the Northern Lights in all its glory. I mean, how often are you going to see that in your life? I mean, this is a once in a lifetime experience for most of us. And if you see that, I think you are compelled to come up with something really extreme. So utterly, this is, well, would I just say this is a once in a lifetime sight. This is the most wondrous spectacle my eyes have ever seen, or I don't know. I'm not doing a good job right now but I'm improvising. Anyway, wouldn't you say that you need a superlative? Okay, as usual, I do hope that this presentation was helpful, that to some extent it was eye-opening, that you woke up to other ways of using the good old comparatives. All right, so this is me signing off. Bye.